Hello and welcome to this episode of Sanctuary. I'm your host, Nissan Chafkin. In my day job, I serve as Executive Director of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago, also known as CRLMC or simply the Council, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Today on Sanctuary, we will focus on CRLMC, its origins, its areas of work, and its importance today. In a few moments, we'll be joined by some members of the Council, but to begin our program, I want to set the stage for how the Council began. Back in 1963, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. convened in Chicago a national conference on religion and race. This extraordinary meeting brought together leaders from across the country to issue an appeal to the conscience of the American people and to take action and eliminate racism. Later that year, a group of local lay and clerical leaders under the leadership of Albert Cardinal Meyer created the Chicago Conference on Religion and Race, which took courageous positions for civil rights, equality, and social justice for many years. Following the election of Mayor Harold Washington in 1983, Chicago experienced another period of racial tensions and political discord. In response, Joseph Cardinal Bernardine invited 15 local religious leaders to a meeting in the spring of 1984. At that gathering, they discussed the crucial questions facing the metropolitan area and shared ideas for how to cooperate in bringing the moral voice of the religious communities to bear upon the challenges and opportunities facing Chicago. Bishop Robert Casey offers some background for Cardinal Bernardine's decision.
Cardinal Bernardine learned in his life how to bring people together in order to promote the common good, ensuring that even the least among us would be seen, heard, and valued. From the days of his youth, throughout his priesthood, and into his service as a bishop, Bernardine found himself grounded in St. Francis's prayer that we might become instruments of peace. He recognized the need to come together with members of all religious traditions so that together we could address the persistent social issues that surround us. As Archbishop of Chicago, Cardinal Bernardine saw firsthand that this diverse but deeply religious city needed instruments, partnerships, and organizations that could bring the gift of faith to the fore and assist in the building up of a healthier, holier human family. It's no surprise, then, that Cardinal Bernardine became a founding member of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago and its first president. Bernardine had that rare gift of being able to bring people together, people with different viewpoints and life experiences, and help them to find common ground, helping us to focus on what unites us rather than what divides us, making possible the advancement of initiatives that could assist all to flourish, especially those most in need.
Through the summer of 1984, these religious leaders prepared a statement on how the city and its people should address these concerns. Issued in September and signed by 21 religious leaders, the statement called for all citizens of Chicago to participate in the building of a city that has moral and ethical values at its foundation. The group then hosted meetings between Harold Washington and his opponents in the city council that resulted in a de-escalation of tensions. The council thus came into existence as a forum for religious leaders to get to know each other and to acknowledge the religious diversity of our city.
When we began, it was really just a Jewish-Christian undertaking. I remember Cardinal Bernardine of blessed memory addressing me as a collaborator in the effort, and that was his major point that he made, that it was necessary for Christianity and Judaism to become more closely related, more understanding of each other's values and therefore the commitments that we make to each other. And so this is how it really started in a way. And now if you look at the table at which we sit at our meetings, particularly the additions that have happened just in the last year, it reflects the fact that we live in a different world.
It is our injunction as a Zoroastrian to move the communities, to move creation. Ahura Mazda's creation, Ahura Mazda is God. Ahura Mazda's creation forward to a blissful stage where there is respect for each other, and the eradication of evil from this world, and make this world a better place for all of us. And that's why we work in the interfaith area.
The Council also offers a vehicle for the faith communities of our region to work together and address issues facing us all.
The major decisions that we have been able to agree on carry great power, such as when Katrina was here, we were asked by the city to provide spiritual care for the Katrina victims. We had every faith community you could think of involved in that after a period of background checks and training. We have been able to open up the Cook County Jail so that religious leaders across the religious spectrum can now more easily and with dignity visit their constituents that might be housed there. We have been able to work effectively with state and local government around such issues as gun control, while not successful, abolishing the death penalty. We stand together.
I am driven by a personal conviction that it is my faith obligation, my moral duty, and my commitment to society that requires me to understand my fellow beings who have faiths other than the one that I do, to understand their concerns and their sensitivities, and then utilize that to develop better understanding and relationships. I feel that is an imperative for me to function productively in this society. And I say that from the basis of my Islamic background, which requires me to be concerned about my fellow beings, and my commitment as a citizen of this country, which requires me to be open and understanding of fellow citizens. So to me, it's a slam dunk case of, if I profess to be a person of faith, if I profess to be a citizen of this country and a member of this society, I have to be committed to interfaith understanding and relations. We should have the ability to discuss hot button issues, talk about Gaza, talk about violence that is going on in that part of the world, but at the same time focus on what we need to do to build our relationships here, and where can we productively engage as citizens of this country and people of faith. And keeping that distinction in mind has always helped me. I can have very strong disagreements with some of my friends within the Muslim community, in the Christian community, in the Jewish community, but that does not and should not prevent me from engaging productively.
When we return from the break, we will talk with current members of the Council about the importance and relevance of their work. We'll be right back.
Metropolitan Chicago is one of the most religiously diverse areas in the world, and for more than a half-century, Sanctuary has reported and reflected on our faith-filled community. Sanctuary tells stories of faith from both inside our houses of worship to the streets and neighborhoods where faith is acted out every day with acts of kindness and concern. From food pantries to peace initiatives, from worship services to servicing the poor, Sanctuary has a proud history of reporting on the goodness that flows from our faith traditions. Watch Sanctuary every Sunday at 12 noon.
Welcome back to Sanctuary. I'm Nissan Chavkin, and today our focus is the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago as it celebrates its 40th anniversary. I'm very pleased to be joined today by representatives from the Council. We have Council Secretary, the Reverend Asayo Horibe, President of the Buddhist Council of the Midwest, our Council Treasurer, Ms. Shayda Safapour of the Bahai community in Chicago, and Ms. Kaur Singh of the Sikh Religious Society, who's also the chair of our Council's 40th Anniversary Committee. Welcome everyone to Sanctuary. I am thrilled that you're here today. And I wanted to start for our viewers. We have, as you know, sort of 4 areas we work in, with promoting interfaith understanding and providing services and opportunities for local faith communities, we are tending to the next generation of interfaith leadership, and we're tending to the common good by looking out for issues of peace and social justice in the community. And so my first question is, which piece of that mission sort of resonates for you and your faith community, or which couple pieces, or is it all tied together? So I thought I would start with you, Shayda, and say what worked for you. So.
Thank you, Nissan, and thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
It's such a treat to be able to talk about this incredible organization that we've all been honored to be a part of. So this Interfaith Council, for me, it's really, there's a twofold importance with it. One is the educational aspect, allowing each other an opportunity to understand each other's faiths better, right? In the world we are in now, there's so much conflict and, frankly, hatred, which is stemming from this misunderstanding of each other's traditions and beliefs. And I think we've hopefully set an example of how we can learn about one another. It's not about convincing the other person, but understanding that other person and respecting and hopefully celebrating our diversity. So this unity and diversity that has come from our educational programs, for me, has been really tremendous and useful. And the other aspect is, I think, acknowledging and celebrating those people in the community who may not even necessarily affiliate with a religion or hold themselves out as religious, but are truly doing the work of bringing people together from different walks of life. And that is our award ceremony every year, where we acknowledge folks that are helping us demonstrate the true spiritual unity that we have in the world. And we're doing that locally here in Chicago, and hopefully fostering a truly inclusive community. I think that is our ultimate goal, and it's been really delightful seeing this unfold.
Cool. Asayo, what speaks to you about the work of the council?
It's a pleasure for me being part of the council all these years, and then officially having the Buddhist Council as part of it. One of the things that I really enjoy is having the interfaith calendar available. It's expanded so much over the years, and I always like to be able to share it with my community as well as other communities that deal with people in the community, the police force, the firemen, other religious leaders who don't have access. And for all of us to be able to gather at different times during the year and get to be friends with other religious leaders as well as part of their community. We host different things at different centers, and we get to learn that it's not just the leader, but it's the community that we're exposed to. The community and the culture. We are so fortunate. We live in a metropolitan area, which is not just exclusively Chicago, but we go all over. And people are finding out that we mean well, we do not have negative intentions, and we want to share what we have and be able to help them learn about other people, not their practice just, but cultures. We're very fortunate here.
Yeah, I think we agree. Sharan, what would you add?
Yeah. So for me, I think, being a member of the council and having so many different representatives of so many different faiths in this council has brought such an eye-opening opportunity for me to really learn, as both Shayda and Asayo have said, in terms of the work that we do. But also, I think for me, what's really important is the fact that, we live in such a polarized world today, and there's so many issues the world is facing, and seeing different religious leaders come together to try to not only understand each other, but also address the concerns that our communities are facing, especially when they're facing them here, locally in the metropolitan Chicago area, is really important. And I think it's also important for us when we call out things, that our different community groups face, that is not what we stand for as a religious community, and that we also should also stand against when they are being hurt or they are being harassed or they are being, basically targeted. So I think these are the things that we as a council do really, really well. And I also think what we do really well is in promoting our peace and social justice work across to other groups in the community as well. And we work very well with either law enforcement or the government in general to make sure that everybody is in sync in terms of the approaches we take to make a better community wherever we live.
Yeah, and this diversity of faiths here on the council alone, we have representatives of, I think, 40 different organizations and communities that are all sort of working together and trying to share a message of, as you say, when someone, it's not being neighborly to attack or vilify your neighbor or attack their place of worship or attack their kids at school, that's out of bounds. And that's not just out of bounds for them, it's out of bounds for every person of conviction, of whether it's a religious faith or not in our community. But it's not something that any of us teaches, and something that needs to be really emphasized, and it's critically important. I think it ties into what we find to be, I guess my follow-up would be what's really important about our work in terms of, is it the education? What is it, Asayo, that you would peg when you talk about cultures and including people? What's the value for the rest of the community, I suppose, from the fact that we have this nice group of people who get to know each other, which is wonderful, but how does that pay off outside the community?
Well, we're able to spread the wisdom of each one of the traditions that we have, because spirituality and religion addresses people, the culture, the practices, and they've survived. These religions have survived for many, many years, and something has to be good about it, right? They've lived all these years, people, and the traditions and the teachings, they've been tried, they've worked, and so we are able to share this and glean the wisdom of ancestors, of church leaders, of leaders of the different cultures, and we can share. I think it's very difficult for people to be able to be convinced that this is bad and that's not good. But religious leaders have an audience, and that audience, it's not easy to be able to address it, but leaders are able to address everybody, and they stand up as authorities. And the challenge is for the community, the people, the world, to be able to decide on the wisdom that's there and choose the right person, because every tradition has wise, learned leaders who've experienced a lot of the life that's gone on around them, no matter where they come from. Because in my tradition, we know that life is suffering. And that's the reason we have our spirituality, our tradition, our religions, our practice. Because we have to deal with this, and some people kind of know better how to deal with it.
Right.
And we have to learn.
And are
And
gracious
some
with
of us
compassion.
can't.
Right. And some of us need more practice.
And that's why Buddhism is called a practice, and I think every tradition. You can't just go to church on Sunday or the mosque or the shul and go home and forget about it.
Yes, it's a matter of practicing what you are thinking and believing, yes?
Yes.
And I think, Shayda, you mentioned that all these different communities coming together and offering their various truths, and they come from very different perspectives, but helping them, how does that sorting out process work? I mean, because everyone knows they're right.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So how do all these people who know they're right manage to, how do they get along? How does that, or is it does that work?
I think about this too, and this is a prime example. We have a Sikh and a Buddhist and a Bahai and a Jew and in a Christian community. We're now hosting this. We've got a wonderful quotation in the Bahai faith that says, "Let deeds, not words, be your adorning." And I feel like the deeds of this organization, the fact that we have this common goal of creating a unified community, a common goal of truly educating the community, of celebrating our diversity, that has brought us together as not just a token gesture of an interfaith group, but as true friendships, as true stewards, working locally with a global perspective. And I think it's been a true, again, inspiration, I think, for a lot of folks who, especially those that maybe feel marginalized, are misunderstood and alienated. And I think hopefully we've been able to demonstrate that it's not about what's right or what's wrong, but again, finding our inherent common ground and inherent desire to want to have a more unified community.
Sharan?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you, and I also want to mention that I think the work of the council is so important, especially when we think about the values and all the different beliefs that these different community groups share. And one of the things that I feel is really important is the respect for human life, for example. That's something that all these community groups share. And in the Sikh faith, we believe that the human life is the highest form of life. And if we don't value this life and we don't appreciate another person's life, we are disrespecting the Creator who formed all these different beautiful lives in different forms and shapes and sizes. And for us to not value that as a community or as a human race goes against the principles of all these different groups and different faiths. So I think basing on that, keeping that in mind, the council has always promoted the different greater goods of each of the communities and what we have done to value human life and what we have done to stand against atrocities when they do happen, and to also speak up and be there for our neighbors when we see them being targeted or being attacked in different ways by people who don't value human life. So I think for me, that's been a really huge important part. And then the other part, which is really important for the council's work, I think, is inspiring the next generation. The next generation of leaders have been so amazing. We've had a cohort last year, and I know we're going to be recruiting another cohort this year. But just seeing them and having them come together in a conference and sharing their points of view of what this new generation of leaders can do is also very inspiring. So I think the more work that we as a council can do in integrating that as we move forward and bring more new generations with us, I think that's the work that's going to live on.
Yeah, I think certainly speaking on behalf of the over 60 members of the council, that it's critical that there is a lot of things that we have learned, both from our life experiences and from working together all this time. But those experiences need to be passed on. There's some tricks of the trade that it's useful to share, in addition to sharing the example, as Shayda, you had pointed out, that it is possible, and it's not. It does take. There are some tricks, or there are some skills, but it's not rocket science. And all due deference to rocket scientists who are very smart, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do this in a way that brings your good intentions and brings the best of your tradition together and brings you together in that thing. So I guess as a wrap up, I would say, what is one element of our work that you'd like to leave with our viewers to say, this is something that you can take home and practice, or something you can turn to the council for resources. So Sharan, we start with you.
Yeah, there's so many things when I think about the work of the council, but if I had to summarize it in a few words, I would say it's about really coming together to promote understanding, to promote love, to promote peace, and to promote, I think, the opportunity to work with other members of the community that you usually wouldn't have an opportunity to work with. So to me, it's this great opportunity we all have to reach out, to extend that lending hand and to say, you know what, we all need to work together, because until we do that, we alone in our silos, in our communities, cannot attain as much as we can to move forward as a community. And I think it's about working together, and it's about solving issues together and facing challenges together to come with solutions together that not only can help one community, but eventually help more than one. So that to me is the most important thing I feel that the council does bring to all of us.
Thank you. Shayda?
Yes, I mean, everything was said so eloquently by both of them, the contributions.
They were very eloquent.
and as you've mentioned too, I mean, we've from the interfaith calendar to these ceremonies that we have acknowledging folks in the community, to the education aspects. For me, I feel it was really, the hallmark has been this ability to go outside our comfort zone and show our fellow respective communities that it can't be. It's no. We're a shrinking world, and so we can no longer avoid the neighbor. We have to make sure that in the Bahai House of Worship, we include and invite people of other faiths. Same as what's being done with the Sikhs. Same as what's being done with the Muslims and the Buddhists and the Jews. And we see this example of people inviting each other into each other's homes, each other's houses of worship, and that by itself, that physical almost gesture is, I think, a wonderful indication of the fact that we are interreliant, we need one another, and it's imperative that we be able to see one another as equal, as friends, in order to really build the sort of just and equitable society that we want.
Go on, that's indeed. Asayo, we've got a minute and close us out here.
Well, I think one of the things is that we've learned that everybody that comes to our table in the council has been able to inherit the skillful means of their culture and their tradition. Not to discount them, but to learn from that and to learn from the history of the successes of all the learned people, from Martin Luther King to Pope John Paul to Thich Nhat Hanh to Muhammad to the Buddha to Jesus. They figured out how we can try to work together and know that we need one another. We depend on one another because we can't survive alone. And if we know that we are part of a whole and that it's one world, it's our world, and there's no them, there's just us.
Oh, well put, well put. Our thanks to everyone who joined us today. Reverend Asayo Horibe of the Buddhist Council of the Midwest, Ms. Shayda Safapour of the Chicago Bahai Community, and Ms. Sharan Singh of the Sikh Religious Society. You can learn more about the work of the Council of Religious Leaders of Metropolitan Chicago at the web address on your screen. Finally, we are very grateful to you for tuning in to this episode of Sanctuary. Until next time, we wish you peace.